Good afternoon, my name is Tristan Lowe and welcome to the Over 40s Fitness Podcast. Today I'm going to look at another one of my go-to reference books. We previously touched on Bodybuilding Encyclopedia by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and today we're going to look at the encyclopedia for training for alpinists. And this book is written by Steve Howes and Scott Johnston with foreword by Mark Twight. I did some research into these guys and they are both elite athletes, alpine athletes. As far as the Western world is concerned, they've travelled the world climbing some of the most fiercest summits and ascents. So, and the reason that I got this book, I think about a year or two ago, is because I've had a long-running interest myself from afar in alpinism and mountaineering, and possibly to my benefit, I didn't get into it at a young age, because there's two outcomes from mountaineering, and that's that you've got some great stories to tell and remember, or the other one is that you're not around here to tell about them because you've been killed. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, there's two outcomes to mountaineering: great stories to tell, you've got through it, reasonably intact, and you've got some great stories. And again, the other outcome is you're not here because you've been killed in the mountains. So I had my first mountain training back in 2022. I went to France and Spain, to the Pyrenees, to train with some professionals, some renowned professionals in the basic fundamentals of alpinism and ascents for climbing, trekking, in winter summits, in winter environments. And then later on in last year, I finally, after reading about the Himalayas since my mid-20s, I finally got to go to the Himalayas, whereby I went to Nepal, and with some professionals as well, Nepalese Sherpas. I spent some time in the mountains towards Everest, and I got to see some of the most fearsome mountains in the world with the naked eye, not on television, not in magazines and books. And I got to about just over 16,000 feet before I got sick. And as some of you know, I got helicoptered off, but luckily I was insured and in good condition, so I managed to recover quite quickly. But that's another story. So what I look at today is I bought this book to give myself, again, reading material that isn't just based on modern ideas in marketing. I had it from a very, very reliable source last year in person, that the gentleman, Nimsdai, who was the guy that was well renowned in the Netflix documentary about doing a whole smorgasbord of summits. He was the guy that I think Netflix worked with him, where he climbed up all the different summits in a short period of time, breaking records, which in itself is an incredible athletic and physiological feat to do one of those summits, let alone however many I did. I think it was something like 14 summits. 99.9% of the people on Earth aren't going to do that. Okay, so before anything else, that guy's an incredible athlete that's done something that you or I are extremely unlikely, almost impossible to do. Okay, but he had help, and you can't do it without help. So he had help from equally as qualified and experienced athletes, Sherpas, some of the world's best Sherpas from Nepal, Tibet, and so okay. Let's look at a couple things. Western climbers, from what I read about, are generally come from a if not high class, then a middle class background. Okay, now if you're a climbing expert, please correct me on that. But the reading that I did on it and the study that I've done on it is that quite often some of the best alpinists in the world that don't come from Asia, the ones that come from Europe, are quite often from for want of a better word, a middle class or a middle socio-economic background. In which case they have the time, effort and means, as well as the interest and the athleticism to train for and eventually one day work on summits. And they normally start in North America, Europe, and then eventually they go to Nepal, Tibet, China, Russia, Pakistan to do the most fearsome summits in the world, of which most of them don't do. They don't actually make it. For every person that you hear about that makes a summit, there's 1,000 that don't. Okay, so it's a rarity to summit anything above 16, 17,000 feet, let alone 25, 26,000 feet. Okay, now fitness training comes in many guises, and I've learned from what I've read and understood in these books, but equally what I've learned from the Sherpas that I spent time with last year in the Himalayas, that some of the best athletes in the world aren't runners, swimmers, cyclists, boxers, athletes. Yes, they are some of the best athletes, but equally some of the best athletes in the world are alpinists, okay? Because they not only have they trained their bodies to do things that most bodies can't do or cope with physiologically, they also there's an outcome to getting it wrong at work. If a basketballer gets it wrong, he misses a free throw, he loses a game. At the very worst, he gets an ACL injury and he's off. If a high altitude alpinist gets it wrong, then he or she, okay, at best, come back to a safe base. What they can do is tell a story of what they got wrong and how they're going to correct it in the future. At worst, they don't come back and they end up left up high, quite often left high up in the mountains, frozen solid and dead. Or even worse, they drop from a height and they never make it to the bottom, because it's almost impossible to make it to the bottom unless you're a free solo climber like Alex Honnold. But generally, they don't hit the bottom. They hit a ledge or they hit a rock. They're dead before they even hit the bottom. So alpinism is not something for the faint-hearted. It's not something to be looked at with rose-tinted glasses or goggles. Okay, I learnt that myself the hard way. This book here, just going back to it again, Training for the New Alpinist. What they cover in this book is how to strength train, aerobic train, how to eat, sleep, where to train, what to do, what not to do. And I can guarantee you, if you've gone to your local gym or leisure centre and done your basic, guys and girls, your 3 sets of 10 bench presses or back rows or squats, and you've gone home and said, oh, I trained hard today, I can tell you from experience, that's relative to you. That is not actually hard. Alpinism is extremely hard. It's rewarding, but equally, it's extremely hard. I had one of the most toughest, if not the toughest, physical test I've ever had, and that was not actually in the Himalayas. It was in the Spanish Pyrenees on a winter summit attempt. We got to about 7,400 feet, and started out in the dark, fully loaded. And I can tell you, I'm a physically fit man, and I did quite a bit of training before I went out to Spain. And I was almost out of my depth. Luckily, I was with professionals. Okay, you're in a hostile environment. Whilst it might be beautiful to look at, to stop and look around, it's actually quite a hostile environment. Everything about alpinism, especially in winter, is geared up to stop you in your tracks. And when I was in Spain, we was attempting a summit of what's called the Maladeta. I think that sits at about 8,000 feet. To give you an idea, when I got to 7,000 plus feet, that's twice the height of Snowdonia. Okay, now again, a lot of people have walked 7,000 feet, more than that, doing Kilimanjaro in the warm weather. Try that in the cold weather in winter. It is a totally different story entirely. I had skiers, I had trekkers, climbers, professionals with me, people that have fallen in crevasses, rescued people at high level altitudes. Okay, and even then we got stopped in our tracks because the weather dictates everything. Yeah, okay, there's nothing that can change an attempt of climbing like the big man upstairs, and that's the weather. Okay, those summits, especially when you get to the high summits in Asia, those summits have got their own weather systems, and you can understand it and read about it in here. So this book, again, like I talked about with the Encyclopedia for Bodybuilding by Arnold Schwarzenegger, this book, as far as I'm concerned, is the go-to book for alpinism. Okay, if you'd like to give yourself a task, it's going to take you a while, train for alpinism, and you'll understand what it's like to be taken out of your comfort zone. I'm a 52-year-old personal trainer. I've been training since I was 11, and I have clients come to see me 6 days a week, and I take them out of their comfort zone, okay, on purpose, because being taken out of your comfort zone physiologically will elicit adaptive changes in the body, okay? If you're always comfortable, okay, things don't change. Don't get comfortable, try alpinism. And yeah, so back to that again, Steve House and Scott Johnston with foreword by Mark Twight. Okay, this book is I think released by Patagonia, which I think, and I got this in 2021, maybe 2022. Great book, good reading, and that's it. My name's Tristan Lowe, and the podcast is the Over 40s Fitness Podcast with me, myself, Tristan Lowe. Okay, I'll touch base again on another book that I keep myself. And remember, don't always go to the quick, shiny ideas for different levels of fitness and exercise. Go and buy a book. Preferably buy it from your local bookstore if they've got one. If not, then order it from that big company that begins with A. That one that we all demonise, but we have to use sometimes if we can't get it local. Support your local bookshop and buy a book. Thanks for watching.